Hey guys! Today we are going to be using crayons to do some still lifes. Look how realistic those look. Just kidding, that's actually an orange. That's actually a piece of candy and my pencil. But we're going to be using these three objects that I found in my house to do what's called a still life. When you make a still life, it's when you look at something in real life where it doesn't move, it just sits completely still, and you do your best to draw it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. If you didn't know what this is a crayon sharpener. There's like a little plastic piece inside that when you twist the crayons, it sharpens it, kind of like a pencil sharpener. There's all sorts of stuff in there. All right, so today we're going to start with the orange, and if I have time then I'll do these two in the same video, or I might just make three separate videos, because when I did these three this morning, I will tell you it took quite a long time. And again, we're just using regular crayons. So first thing we're going to do at the top of your paper is label what we're drawing. We are drawing a still life. You can also write the materials that you are using or the medium, and that's crayons. As you can see, I have this piece of cardboard from a cereal box that we worked on last week. I'm just going to set that underneath this piece of paper, and I know I'm not using watercolor today, right? I'm not using watercolor, but I know that I might end up pushing down really hard on the paper while drawing this orange. And if I end up pushing down really hard on the paper, it may dent or make little valleys on the pages underneath. So this cardboard will help protect those pages even from just me pushing down very hard. All right, so we're starting with this still life. Now the first thing I want to do is get an extra light. Now I'm using a headlamp, but you could use a book light or a lamp, or maybe the light in your bedroom is good enough. But for what I'm doing today, I want an extra light source so that you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna put it on this side actually. I think that looks a little better. There you go. That looks pretty nice. Now when I sit down, because I'm standing up right now, but when I sit down, I won't be able to see exactly what you see, which is looking straight down on this orange, right? On this cutie. I will be sitting at an angle. So what I'll see is it'll probably look more like this when I sit down. So that's what I'm going to start to draw, is just like what I see from where I'm sitting. Okay? I'm going to draw it right next to it, and I want to make sure I can see all of the shadows, because the shadows and these little white lights on here are called highlights. These little highlights and these shadows, when you add those, that's what makes it look more realistic than if you just colored an orange circle and said this is an orange. Same thing for your pencil, right? There are highlights on the pencil, there are shadows, and for the candy as well. Okay. All right, so now that I'm looking at my orange, I'm going to pick out a color just to get started, and on my Crayolas, this says yellow orange. So I'm starting with yellow orange first, and I'm just going to draw probably about the same size, but you could draw a little bit smaller, or you can even draw really big if you can. That's really fun. When you draw bigger, you have more availability because of the space to draw really fine details. I'm just going to draw what I see. So I am making sure to hold my crayon like an oil pastel, and if you have oil pastels, this would be a really fun thing to try, or fun lesson to do with oil pastels instead of crayons. I just kind of figure that during quarantine we are all at home and no one probably has all of the materials that we are so used to using inside of the classroom. So hoping that you guys have crayons, okay, hoping, fingers crossed, right? Now that I have a really light base color here, Okay, it's really light. I did not push down it hard at all. You know, very hard with this at all. So I'm gonna start with this green detail first, because one thing that I had trouble with on this last page was the stem, and just kind of because I had layered, you know, when you put one color on top of another color, because I had layered so much on here, I couldn't add any more really small details. So I'm gonna start this time. I learned my lesson, and I'm gonna start with adding some fine details. So mine is kind of like, it's not in the center, it's kind of sitting over here from where I'm sitting. And I'm gonna start by drawing the details that I see right on my stem. And I wanna add some yellows. On there. And it looks like there's like a white highlight on the top for me, so I'm gonna add white. This is like the only time you can use a white crayon on white paper is after you've done some layering. Okay. I'm actually gonna use this. This is like a bluish. It's called aquamarine. That's the color name. But I'm gonna use this just to give a little bit darker color on this one side, so I have a nice little blue-green layer, and then I'll add a little bit more green. It's just a different shade of green. All right. Okay, now I want to start layering all the different colors that I see. And white, when you layer white on top of all these oranges, reds, and browns, I think that it looks even better once you have a really thick layer of that waxy crayon. When you're working, you should be able to feel the paper and then feel the crayon as you work. It's really fascinating, kind of like oil pastels, but because these are made of wax, right? That'd be a fun video to watch. You should look up how do people make crayons. I'm gonna start with a different shade of orange, and just on the sides of the orange that are darker, I'm still really lightly, okay, really lightly. I'm just gonna layer all the way up to that stem and just get a nice layer of this. This is called red orange. Okay, just coming back with this nice red orange. And it's actually, from where I'm sitting, this is like a lighter color on this side. So I'm gonna just bring this down on the front and leave that side alone. And then there's like a little reddish color around the top. This is actually really difficult, not just for children, but also for adults, to be able to look at something that's your entire life you've said this is orange, and then have to decide how to color it. How do you color that? You know, that's difficult. It is difficult because there's a lot of different colors and shades, and not everybody recognizes all the different colors or can see them. It's taken me a long time to be able to see them as well. Okay, so for the shading on the orange, right? So we have our light source coming from over here, also from my window. That's why the shadow is on this side. So we know that the majority of highlights are over here, but we have this nice reflective light on this side, which is why I left that alone. I left that just sit there. I'm gonna grab some more yellow orange and just kind of fill that in just a little bit with yellow orange. Maybe I'll add a whole nother layer of yellow orange over this whole sphere. And I'm gonna call it a sphere and not a circle, because the orange is a sphere. It's not a circle. A circle is flat. It's two-dimensional, right? When we first started this, we drew an orange circle. And now that we're trying to make it look like a sphere, we're adding those highlights, right? Just like we worked on last week with that ballpoint pen project, right? We're working with highlights and shadows. A lot of the shading that's on here, I'm going to layer with a little bit of brown, like just a light brown. If you just have regular brown, I think that would work too. Just remember to start off really lightly, and I'm just drawing little circles, little circles. I'm not pushing down hard, even though you might not be able to see anything quite yet. You know, you don't really see any colors that it's leaving behind. I promise you, if you're moving a crayon around, you're leaving wax behind. Just like when you're moving a pencil around, you're leaving lead behind, even if you can only barely see it. Okay, and we can always come back and add more layers, right? That's right. So I'm just adding this nice light brown shading around the side. And I'm gonna grab a yellow, just a regular yellow. It's nothing, no fancy name on this one, and just give this whole side, because I know the light's coming from over here, so I'm just going to give this whole side a little yellow glow to it. Trying not to go over my green stem that I started with. Just this whole side over here. Okay. Now on my reflective light, right, this is like a really bright white highlight. It's like a very direct light. It definitely, if I look at it, it looks white. But over here, there's actually a curve, like a crescent moon, right? Like your thumbnail going around the edge. And this reflective light is not white. We're gonna use white to make it, but then we're gonna have to layer some colors over it. So I'm gonna start with some yellow, and just on this one spot that I left alone, add that in. Okay. All right, now I'm going to start adding highlights, but I'm going to end up layering this several more times. So right now, just where we left this yellow on this side of the orange, and where I can see these two distinct highlights and a little bit over here, I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of put on pretty thick this white crayon. So I am pushing hard this time. Pushing a little bit hard. Now, I don't want it to be white over here, right? I want it to have a nice reflective appearance. But if I wanted it to be all the way white, I would have left it like the color of the paper. All right, now there's a white highlight right here. And there's another one right on this side right here that's really big. Now, one thing, if you notice in this highlight, you can actually see the dimples, right? Just kind of like a golf ball, where those circular divots, right? The little dots on here. If you feel your orange, you can feel those dots. I'm gonna go back in later and make those. Now, I see a couple more highlighted areas on my orange. Just knock off some of the extra wax. Right here, right where my stem, it's almost like a pumpkin, right? There's these little teeny tiny wrinkles, these ridges right here. And I'm gonna add white on one side and brown on the other, so that you can tell that there's a shadow on one side and a highlight on the other. Okay, so one, there's another one on this side over here. You don't want to use your fingernail and scratch that off. If it doesn't come off on its own, that's okay, right? It's okay. And curve this around a little bit. And then there's a nice little reflective light on the bottom under here. Okay. All right, so there's that white. Now I'm going to go ahead and layer this one more time with orange. Where's like straight up orange? Is this orange? That's yellow orange. Is this orange? That's red orange. What's this? Scarlet. Do I not have orange? Weird. All right. Yellow orange it is. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of color over here. Just on the edge, just to give it just a light color over top of that white, just to kind of clean up that white edge. And then there's actually like a little piece missing in this highlight. Same up here. There's a piece missing, so I'm just going to cover up that highlight because I didn't really want it to be that bright. And same thing on this side. I'm going to just darken that up a little bit. Oh, that looks nice. All right, let's do a little bit of yellow on this side and add a little bit of orange around. Now, wait, if you were in my classroom, I would be stopping and walking around and helping you, trying to figure out exactly what colors you see and what we're missing, and I miss that. I miss that. I'm just guessing for right now, and you can't even see the same angle of this orange that I see, but that's okay. All right, now I'm gonna take, this is the red orange, and I'm just gonna go around and kind of make little dots. Now you don't wanna make big circles and you don't wanna make lines. So I'm just pressing the crayon to the paper. You can almost hear it snap. See, and that was a line. I don't want that. I'll just take that off with my fingernail. Dot, 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 dot. Oh my gosh, my kids love doing this with the color pencils, just making that terrible snapping sound. They stab the table with the pencil. No concept of being gentle. That's okay. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good orange. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's cute, right? That's pretty cute. If you made a mistake, let's go ahead and make a mistake on purpose real quick. Just me. I'm just gonna make a mistake on purpose. So let's say your stem, right? You forgot about it and you layered it right at the end, and it ended up being really big because your crayon is not sharpened. You don't have one of these fancy crayon sharpeners. Oh my gosh, just dump that everywhere. Well, you can take a pencil or a paper clip and actually just draw some details into the wax. Let's see if I can find it. Like that. Okay. Just draw those details into the wax. You can pull that wax up. Okay. So the pencil is just grabbing the top layer of wax and pulling it off of the paper, and then you just have to wipe the pencil and you wipe the paper away. This is actually a really fun thing. We might have to do something like this for around Mother's Day, because you can do some pretty cool things if you layer black crayon over a whole bunch of colors. That's pretty fun, actually. All right, last but not least, I'm gonna take this brown and go ahead and finish up a couple of these dark shadows and dark spaces on my orange. Just go ahead and it's not bruised or anything, it's just kind of like this. There's just a curve on this side because the highlight's over here. So just almost like the shadow is brown. And I'll add a little brown around the stem and draw some lines for those divots, those little pumpkin lines on my orange. Okay. All right, now it's time for the shadow. Now the shadow, I'm gonna do this two ways because there are a lot of people who have black crayons and there's a lot of people who don't have gray. I would like to, if it was my choice, I would start with gray and then add black later, or maybe not at all. But because some friends don't have gray, maybe you only have black, I'm gonna show you how to do this two ways. Now there are two light sources. There's one coming from my headlamp and one coming from the window, right? So if you look at the shadow on my orange, you will actually see two shadows, right? There's one darker shadow that's closer to the orange, and then a lighter shadow which is kind of long and almost elongated like an egg, right? Like a long egg right here. And they're two different colors. There's a highlight sitting in the middle of this shadow. And the edges of the shadow are not hard edges. Like we just drew this nice brown line, this hard edge right here on this side of the orange. that's a hard line. We drew a line there, right? This is not a hard line. Like this, if you had oil pastels, right, and you were going to add a shadow, you would take your finger, a Q-tip, or a tissue, and you would blend that out. You could even do this with a pencil if you don't have that kind of a crayon. If you're doing this with colored pencils instead of crayons, you could do this with a pencil and then actually take your finger and blend that out and make it look like a really nice shadow. I'm going to start with gray first and move this over here so I can look at the shadow reference, because that's what still lifes are. You look at something in real life and you draw from real life. So I'm going to look at my shadow reference and I'm going to draw this circle first. It's kind of like, it kind of comes out and then it definitely starts in the middle on the bottom and comes around like that. And that's the darker one. So I'll go ahead and fill this in with gray first. Okay. And then there's the second one on the outside that's even lighter than this first one, but they overlap. So it actually overlaps over here. And then it comes out like an egg, right? Long and kind of ovally. Okay. And then this is even lighter. Now I had to draw that line a little bit darker because I knew you couldn't see it on the camera, but if you're at home and you're doing this, then you could probably do that much lighter than before. Okay. Then this, see how those overlap? There's actually 3 shadows now. It's probably because I moved it. Okay, so this one's a little bit darker on this side, and then this is even darker. So I'm going to push down hard and add another layer here. Okay. To me, that looks like a pretty good shadow. This is not the darkest part, but I'm just going to darken that up a little bit. This looks like a pretty good shadow, but I'm going to go over it with black. Now, when you're using a black crayon, you don't have to push down very hard. If you push down hard, you'll see black. But if you push down really lightly, you'll see gray. So just like I did with the brown when I was touching and layering the orange, I'm just going to draw a really light black line here first, right? Barely touching it, barely. And then just very lightly, right? Same as when we were layering the brown on the orange. We don't want to push down too hard. Okay. Nice and light. Really, really light as you can, really. I'm just going to go back over this part a little bit more. And I am not going to do this other shadow with the black. I am going to try to make it a little bit fuzzier on the edge and bring this gray over here to this black and kind of make it wiggly just so that I can see. Alright. I think we might be good here. Alright, that was my orange. I hope you liked that video. Oh my gosh, that took so long. This is my orange, and I will do another video of the pencil and the candy in a minute. Have a great day.